Something has been concerning me for a while now, and I have a feeling you might be noticing it too. Our students are surrounded by screens. At school, at home, even during downtime. And while technology absolutely has a place in the classroom and in our lives, it's becoming clear that it's taking too much space. In this episode, we're diving into what that means for our students' engagement, their emotional regulation, and their social development, and what we as creative, caring educators can do about it. Spoiler alert, it doesn't mean throwing out the Chromebooks, but it does mean bringing more creativity, movement, and human connection into the mix. Hey friends, welcome to Enjoy Teaching Again, the podcast for teachers who love the work but need a little spark to bring the joy back. I'm your host, Elizabeth Peterson, classroom teacher, arts integration specialist, and passionate educator of over 25 years. If you're overwhelmed by behaviors, disengaged students, and long, exhausting days, you are not alone. But together, we can turn things around and you can teach with confidence and purpose again. So locate that cold coffee of yours, find your favorite pen, I know you have one, and let's dive in. It's time to get inspired and enjoy teaching again. My first teaching job back in 1999, I didn't even have a computer on my desk. I remember making things on my computer at home, printing them at home, and then bringing it to school to make copies. I think it was about halfway through the school year that we even had teacher emails, and I had to check them either at home or in the school library. But it didn't even matter how often I checked my email because parents weren't emailing me. They were just sending me notes. Now, just like I'm sure you experience, not a day goes by that my inbox isn't filled with emails from my colleagues, announcements, and parent emails, let alone all the miscellaneous junk that fills up my email inbox. And I literally cannot teach now without a computer in my classroom. And in schools, well, students are using Chromebooks all day for assignments and research and math practice and video lessons and using it in place of a workbook or a paper quiz. It actually wasn't long ago that my idea of integrating technology into my school day meant putting the morning message on a PowerPoint slide and projecting it on the whiteboard in the front of the room. Now we're using it daily to model examples and show videos, display agendas, share pictures, put up a timer. But here's the problem. Research shows us that too much screen time can affect kids' brains, even if that screen time is educational. There's a term called electronic screen syndrome. It was coined by psychologist Dr. Victoria Dunkel. It's where students can become more impulsive, moody, and inattentive from too much screen time. And for kids who have already experienced trauma, these effects can be even more significant. We're talking about impacts on attention and memory, emotional regulation, social behavior, and deep down, I think we already know all this, don't we? I mean, we feel it. We see it in our students every single day. So what is a teacher to do? Because we can't just stop using technology in our classroom. In fact, the technology is going to grow inside our classrooms, especially with AI, artificial intelligence. And by the way, I've got an exciting interview coming up next week about using AI in the classroom, so make sure you hit follow and so that you're notified when that comes out, okay? But today I want to take a step back and I want to think about technology in general because there is something legit about us finding balance between utilizing technology for everything we do and just plain getting off screens. So the first thing I want to challenge you to do is actually do a classroom tech audit. Okay, you can do this yourself as you're teaching for a day or two, or even just think right now, how often do you or your students get on screens over the course of a couple of school days? Now, this would be a great thing for you to do with your students too. Have them track their screen time over a couple of days. They can do it at school, or they can even include their home too. And then they can graph data and reflect on how it made them feel. This could even be a fun little extra math project where they graph out that data, and it certainly can touch on some social emotional awareness as well. I can even see this turning into a fun poetry assignment. Okay, but I digress. But this can be a foundational exercise that you then use to help your students to understand why you, as their teacher, want to incorporate some off-screen tasks throughout the day. And I can't imagine any level-headed administrator not seeing the value in this. I remember just this past school year, the question was brought up at a school committee meeting in my district asking how much time are elementary students spending on devices. And the percentage turned out to be well over 50% of the time. When you take into consideration just about all, if not every single curriculum that we're being asked to teach has a hefty technology component to it, it's no mystery that our students are being asked to be on their Chromebook, not just for big projects, but for their daily assignments. Our new math program basically can be taught without a workbook, without paper and pencil, and personally, I do have a little bit of a problem with that. You know, recess and play are going to make a big time comeback, mark my words. I just know it's going to because the pendulum has swung so far to the tech side of things that we are going to be craving experiences in our physical world. We're going to want our students to have more time working together, looking at each other, making things with their hands. We've already seen students' social emotional skills deteriorating. And I personally think it has a lot to do with technology. And honestly, there are things that we can be doing inside our classrooms to create some of that balance. And that's how I'd like to spend the rest of this episode, is talking about how to do that. In fact, this is such an underlying theme inside of my group coaching program, the Classroom Reset. And when you join, you not only get to reset aspects of your classroom to help improve student behavior and bring back the joy in teaching, but you also learn to bring creativity and play and hands-on arts integration strategies seamlessly into your classroom. And it just becomes part of the fabric that makes a type of atmosphere where students are more regulated and balanced and engaged in their learning. So let's talk a little bit more about what that means and what that can look like. When students are fixated on screens, they often absorb information without truly processing it or integrating meaningfully with their peers or their teacher. Now, technology does have a place in our classroom, but also hands-on creative experiences can have a huge part in our classroom and in our students' learning because they activate different areas of the brain and they support emotional and social development. And these types of strategies that you'll learn so much more about when you join the Classroom Reset, they help all students. Things like music and movement and drama and drawing and storytelling, all these types of activities that embed themselves into your content and give students the chance to do things like express themselves, to use so many parts of their brains, to regulate their emotions, to connect and interact with other peers. I want to just give you a moment to picture one of your students sitting at their Chromebook at their desk, playing, say, a math game. It can absolutely be a math game that you even assigned to them, and that's working on a skill that's hitting on a state standard for your grade level. For example, I'm picturing a student practicing equivalent fractions with like a fraction jumping game. But in your mind's eye, I want you to picture what that student actually looks like as they're sitting at their desk on their Chromebook. Their eyes are glued to the screen. They're hunched over. They're overusing their right index finger to manipulate the mouse. And they're one-on-one with their Chromebook. Now I want you to picture that same student working on the same math standard using 3D manipulatives on their desk. And in my case, it would probably be fraction bars. And they're able to sit up more, their head is up more, they're using all their fingers, they're able to look around and maybe even glance at what other classmates are doing at their desks. And in some cases, maybe you even have that student working with another couple of kids in the room so that they're talking and they're working together. It's just a different feel, and it seems more open and engaging. And let's be clear, I'm not talking about ditching technology. Personally, I would be lost without technology. I'm suggesting that we really should be cognizant of how we're using technology, how much or how often we're using it in the classroom, and what experiences we might be replacing when we rely too heavily on technology for our day-to-day assignments, especially when it's happening throughout the entire day. So what would this look like? Well, it can be as simple as replacing that math game on a Chromebook with a physical math game. And yes, this may take a little extra effort or time, but it can be so worth it. I remember not too long ago, my math program that I was using had all kinds of great math games that worked on some skills like area versus perimeter. I think the game is called Rugs and Fences. I still have the game in my classroom because I remember it being so effective. Dice games that help students to do everything from add and multiply to probability. Just there's so many awesome hands-on math games and other games that you can have your students work on that are not on the Chromebook. Another example is when you have indoor recess or some free time, just tell the kids they can't go on their Chromebooks. I'll tell you, whenever I do this, the kids groan, but within a minute, everybody is figuring out something else to do. And when I start digging out my treasure trove of quote-unquote indoor recess activities like blocks and checkerboards and, mazes and things like that, they just light up. They crave this stuff. And this might mean that things do get a little louder, but the extra volume, it's so worth it. And then there are so many other small ways that you can just incorporate some physical learning into your everyday lessons, whether they're on screens or not, that will help your students to engage in creative ways. For example, you can have students act out vocabulary terms that you come across, or historical moments, or even act out emotional responses to different texts that you're reading. I know a lot of teachers love doing brain breaks, especially when you have a class that needs to be on their Chromebook for so much of the day. So let's take a look at that, a traditional brain break, as another example of how this can easily be considered throughout your school day. Brain breaks are so important, especially if your students are working on devices for an extended period of time. And yet, I'm going to encourage you to not utilize a video to take that brain break. Instead, I would love for you to turn off the screen and have the students close their Chromebooks or turn them around so they can't see them, and stand up and go ahead and lead a movement break yourself or ask another student to do it. That way your class's eyes aren't just fixated on the people or the characters on the screen and copying their movements, but you're making human-to-human eye contact inside your physical space. You're giving your students that opportunity to look at you and look at each other and interact with each other. This is a true brain break. So here's the next thing I want you to try, okay? I want you to think about what is one way that you can actually shave off a little bit of the tech time that you have inside your school day and replace it with something a little bit more hands-on and physical. And this is something I can do as well. For example, my thing recently has been during free time, telling the kids you're not allowed to go on Chromebooks. So think about a lesson that you've relied on technology before, and instead you can do it off the Chromebook. You're still teaching the same standards. No one's even going to notice. I'm not going to tell, okay? Maybe there's an opportunity for you to slip in a short writing prompt where students are hand writing a couple of sentences and then sharing it with a partner. There truly is something to be said about holding a pencil and putting it to paper and writing down your ideas. And that comes from someone who absolutely loves to type. I love to do all my rough drafts on the computer typing, but there still is something about having that opportunity to hold a pencil and write down what I'm thinking or my ideas. Now, it may seem a little ridiculous that I'm suggesting some of these things, but if you've done that classroom tech audit that I asked you to at the beginning, and you realize just how much of our school day is taken up by technology, then you know the value of inserting these little moments of being tech-free. And often what I find is that it's just a matter of us teachers having the moment to pause and reflect on something like this that can make such a huge difference from this moment on. Which brings me to my final big umbrella thought when it comes to technology in the classroom, and that is teacher autonomy. I know that so many teachers feel like they don't have much control over the content in their curriculum that they're teaching, and that can include how much technology you use in the classroom. Because let's face it, so many of our curriculums are tech-based. But I really want you to reconsider that. You do have some say in how much technology is used in your classroom. You may not be able to throw out a new curriculum that was adopted by your district, and I'm not suggesting that, but you do have some say in the foundational aspects of how you run your classroom, and you should definitely exercise that. Let's be real, tech isn't going anywhere, but if you're ready to reclaim your classroom from screen overload and bring some joy and creativity and calm back into your day-to-day, you absolutely can. And when you join the Classroom Reset, it's going to give you some of those practical, creative strategies to really transform your classroom culture in a way that's going to improve student behavior and prevent some burnout as well. I'm going to walk you through everything from engagement techniques that actually work to arts integration strategies, social emotional skill development, and behavior solutions that don't feel like adding more to your plate, but will just sink into your classroom culture. Whether you've been teaching for 2 years or 20, this is your invitation to join me inside the Classroom Reset. Now, next week, I'm chatting with my brilliant sister-in-law, Christina Peterson, who co-wrote a whole book on AI in the classroom. She's got practical tools and surprising insights that you're going to love. So make sure you are subscribed or you're following this podcast so you don't miss it. I hope this episode inspired you, encouraged you, or gave you a fresh idea to try. And if so, I would love for you to take a screenshot and text it to one of your teaching buddies. I'm so grateful that you landed here with me today, and it would mean the world to me if you would leave me a review over on Apple Podcast. Thanks so much for being here, and I'll catch you on the next episode. This is Elizabeth Peterson reminding you to get inspired so you can be inspiring to your students and enjoy teaching again.